For this meeting, Commissioner Franklin and Commissioner McFarland will be attending virtually. It's possible that Commissioner Artiano will be absent unless we see him pop up on the screen. I'm going to open the meeting and take a roll call. I'm Kalina Vendetti. I'm here. Jim Franklin? Here. Don McFarland?
Here.
Here. Megan Hickey?
Here.
And Marilyn Cuzzadoy?
Here.
And Brian Payne?
Here.
Thank you very much. Please note we're doing a hybrid meeting with both in-person and virtual attendance. So if a member of the virtual public would like to make comments during a public hearing, please use the raise hand function on Zoom, and you'll be assigned a speaking time. And if you're listening in via telephone dial-up, press *9 to raise your hand, and then press *6 to unmute yourself. This meeting is being recorded by the local scene. We're very grateful. And a record of this meeting will be posted on the local scene website as soon as they're able. Anyone intending to make an audio or video recording of this meeting should notify me at this time. Okay, great. This is just an additional announcement. Kingston's Open Space Committee is seeking a new member. The committee assists this Conservation Committee, in overseeing the management and use of conservation properties to help all of us better access and utilize these resources in a positive way. This is an opportunity for a resident to assist in implementing the town's open space plan, help improve parking and trails, and identifying future conservation and passive recreation priorities in the town, among other things. You may inquire by calling the Conservation Department at 781-585-0537 or by emailing Juliana Denham at jdenham@kingstonma.gov. All right. That's jdenham@kingstonma.gov. First order of business is the signing of documents. Will you let us know what needs to be signed, Matt?
We have the COC, two COCs, local and state, for 120 Country Club Way that was approved at the last meeting.
All set? Thanks. I'll now open a public meeting to discuss the request for determination of applicability for 2 Wildwood Circle, filed retroactively for construction of a large play structure within jurisdiction. Matt, do you have any comments?
Could let the representative give a presentation.
Certainly. You want to identify yourself for the record?
Good evening, members of the commission. Brad Holmes from ECR, representing Dan Cleggett for his property at 2 Wildwood Circle. We filed an RDA application to bring this property into compliance with the state and local regulations. An enforcement order was issued to Mr. Cleggett for construction of a play set. There's a play set in the back of his property, which is partially within the 100-foot buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland and within the 200-foot Kingston 200-foot zone to an intermittent stream under the Kingston wetland regulations. There used to be a pool and an above-ground pool and deck surrounding the pool at the property that was in place prior to the applicant's ownership, and he replaced that pool and deck with a play set. It is a very nice, elaborate play set. It's got different levels and sandboxes and decking, but it's generally within the footprint of the pool that was there. He didn't know at the time that permits were needed. An enforcement order was issued. We're hopefully going to bring the property into compliance, so that's the purpose of the RDA application. We did get a chance to review staff comments. We responded with some approximate calculations based off aerial imagery that we can discuss further if needed. And with that, I'll bring it back to you.
All right, do you have anything to say, Matt?
Sure. Yeah, and I think everybody remembers this one from the enforcement issue. Part of the issue was that pool itself was never permitted, but that was built by the previous homeowner. So from my being there, I've confirmed, or it at least appears from all the evidence, that the structure was built within the existing fenced yard area. It's in the outer extent of the 100-foot buffer to the BVW, outside of the 50-foot no structure boundary. It's in the outer 100-foot, between 100 and 200 to the intermittent stream, and in an area that's already cleared. Whether it was legally cleared is debatable, but it has been cleared for 10 to 15 years. So it was nothing that this homeowner did. We have a few different performance standards that apply for riverfront area, buffer zone, impervious coverage, and structures. Most relevant being the impervious surface standard, the 10.05B, maximum 15%. My staff report noted that from my very crude calculations, it appeared that they may be over 15%. Again, one of the previous homeowners built like a garage or a barn or something at the end of the driveway within jurisdiction without a permit, so there just over the years has been more and more impervious surface on the property. Performance standards for riverfront areas apply, but in this case, as I said, this portion of the riverfront area has not been in a natural state for at least 10 to 15 years, fenced in, considered part of the yard, has 100+ feet of naturally vegetated buffer to the intermittent stream and 50+ feet of naturally vegetated buffer to the BVW. So I don't see this project as altering any resource areas other than potentially through the addition of impervious surface. And the existing lawn itself in that area may be more detrimental due to chemical and fertilizer runoff. So I had recommended that we would require documentation of percent impervious coverage, and any permit that's issued, Commission may want to impose special conditions such as limiting outdoor chemical use. ECR did reply to as he said, with the calculations. What they put forward is that the existing, before the structure was built, was at 13.9% impervious surface, and now that that's built, 17.3. So that, and I did sort of bring this up with the homeowner when we did a site visit months ago during the enforcement issue, was just that may be the only real issue with this project, would be impervious surface, not knowing what the percentage was, and the commission essentially being limited at 15% unless they're going to issue a variance. Two issues with that on this project would be, I don't think the commission can issue a variance through a DOA. So the only way the commission would be really issuing a variance would be through an NOI filing, which would be pretty expensive for a play structure. I don't think the commission's issued a variance in my time here to allow somebody to go over 15% without some sort of mitigating circumstances being, I don't know, a buried concrete slab or other sort of, pre-existing conditions that were already over 15 is more typical. In this case, sort of what I had said to the homeowner during the site visit was that had he known he needed permitting, then, a simple solution would have been spacing the boards out to 3/8 of an inch, and it's all pervious, and then it's easy. You know, at this point, my recommendation would be that he work with Brad to figure out, you know, I believe the homeowner built, you know, the majority of the structure himself, or, you know, with assistance, but, you know, I think figure out how much of it you would need to make pervious. You know, is everything screwed in? Can it just be, is it Trex? Is it a matter of unscrewing a handful of boards and spacing them out, and then you're under 15%? Commission at that point would be able to issue a DOA. There would be no other, you know, real concerning things about the project. It's more of like a procedural issue, I think, where we're over that 15%. That's pretty well documented. Anything up in that range is considered to be detrimental to the resource areas, even though in this case you do have vegetated buffer between the project and the resource areas. The commission really can't and shouldn't allow, you know, anybody to go over 15%, and particularly through a DOA. And part of that is due to previous development on the property without a permit, you know, increasing that percent coverage up close to the 15%. But those are my thoughts. Anyways, that was the way I could see it. There's really, I don't think, any other issue with this project other than impervious surface. It is part of it in small areas. Like some of it, it's, you know, walkways going around an area where it's sand, where you would get infiltration in between. I mean, it's not a huge pad of concrete, but, you know, if that's what the numbers are, that's what the numbers are. So I don't know how accurate the numbers were. There may be a chance to go back and revisit and see if maybe there are certain parts that don't count as impervious, or see if there's one little deck area that by spacing the boards out to 3/8 would just take care of the whole thing and get it under 15.
Do you want to address that, Commissioner?
Sure, a couple thoughts. The pool and deck that was placed would have required a permit because it was in the buffer zone. I think that the 200-foot riverfront is somewhat new-ish to the commission within, I don't think it was in place in 2015-16.
Yeah, for rivers, for streams it was, yeah. The newer interpretation was the vernal pools.
Okay, I was thinking it was, it's not a riverfront, but I don't remember.
It's not a riverfront under the state.
Correct, but
Yeah.
but I didn't know what the date was when protection for intermittent streams. I didn't think it went back that far, but I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
The other part of this, if this was a riverfront project and we're working under the state regulations for riverfront, this would be a scenario where we would use mitigation to offset, like, you know, like at a 2-to-1 ratio kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
There is open space beyond the fence leading down to the, you know, vegetated buffer, that there's an opportunity to plant there. So my first thought would be if we could, you know, vegetate that area to compensate for this amount, that would be probably easier than taking the decking and spacing it. But if that's not an option because we're talking about the variance request, then I would pursue with him the option to, you know, space the boards where necessary. Some of that decking is elevated, you know, as part of the structure, so, you know, underneath is, you know, open.
Mm-hmm.
But there are larger steps that are probably, you know, 5 or 6 boards, you know, together that could be spaced. So we could certainly look at that. The easier option would be to, and probably ecological benefit would be to add plantings between the fence and the wetland, but if it's more of a coverage and compliance with that standard, and we would look at spacing the planks. I guess it's up to you, the commission, what they think would be acceptable.
Any thoughts?
Any thoughts from the commission?
Well, I think we're trying to be reasonable, and I understand your point about the construction versus the planting, but Matt, you're more familiar with the site than I am, and
There was an area behind the fence that I pointed out during the enforcement hearing that I thought looked like it may have been disturbed. and I believe the homeowner said that that was like that when he bought the property. I don't know. I don't necessarily want to speak on whether that would be beneficial or not. I think it should vegetate on its own if it's left alone, and it should be left
Normally
alone. It's
that's
outside of the fence. It shouldn't be dumped on.
Right.
I made that, I think, pretty clear that, you know, it's not, you're not dumping stuff back there. You're not clearing all the leaves off of it every year, blowing them closer to the wetlands or into the wetlands. I just wonder, I don't recall a situation, and I may be wrong, that the commission, I don't want to say utilized mitigation, but allowed mitigation for something that would need a variance during
Right.
an RDA.
Yeah. It's numbers.
Excuse me?
It's numbers.
Correct.
Like I said, I could be wrong. We may have done one, but I don't recall
No.
doing anything variance mitigation based during an RDA process. It seems like it shouldn't be done, but it also seems ridiculous to have somebody file an NOI for a play
Oh,
structure, because
yeah.
you're talking engineered plans and all sorts of, you know, cost to that.
Right.
That's not necessary. So
No.
I guess my recommendation would be that we continue and the applicant and the representative figure out how they can get under 15%. I don't know what this, I didn't really run the numbers to see what the difference in square footage would be to get it under 15. If you look at that and you know you can't hit it by pulling a few boards and spacing some stuff out, then, I don't know, get in touch with me and maybe we can see what the options are on that property for kind of, like I said, you may also be able to look closer. I think you said you did this based off of aerials. You know,
Right.
maybe by actually going out in the yard and measuring off and seeing there may be, like I know there were portions of it that I would not, that nobody would count as impervious surface because, you know, the area underneath the swing set is just, I think, sand or wood chips or something like that. So any of those types of areas, making sure that those weren't counted. Maybe you are already under 15 and.
Could take another look, and I would think that, like, the decking that's, you know, between structure that's elevated, you know, I don't know, you can walk under it, even though those boards would be together, I wouldn't necessarily say they're impervious, because, you know, everything underneath is open, but there are certainly decks on the ground that are together that
Right.
we could look at
Yeah.
those numbers and then spacing the decking 3/8 of an inch, would you recommend?
Yeah.
And I think that would be something that we could do.
Okay.
So,
Lena, may I?
Do you,
Is this Jim?
Yep.
Yes, sure.
So, I think you guys are going down the right lane. It's clear that, you know, from the images that you have here, that, you know, that what might be a board is going to run off, and it only looks like it's, you know, 40 inches wide on some of these structures, these pathways that connect, right? So when you get into that, the intent here is not to, you know, just stick to paper definitions, just to do that, right? Is there a detriment? And the detriment is based off there being close boards and the water not being able to run, and then it just kind of creating a cascading effect when it does start to run, right? So in this case, I don't think we have that. So I think that, you know, with a little bit of effort, they should be able to document that, and we can say, hey, we looked into this. This isn't that type of situation where we're over 15%, and then it becomes, you know, an easily dismissed thing. So that would be my recommendation for that.
Is there any comment from members of the public present? Virtual public? No? Anything else from the commission?
No.
Could I hear a motion to continue?
do you need longer than a couple weeks or?
yes, in the sense that we'll do the work and get it over to you. I'll have some coordination so that we'll be in place for the following meeting, if that's possible.
Yeah, I certainly don't think there's any rush. It's a retroactive project anyways, so, a month?
That would be great. I'd rather have some coordination in time for the next meeting.
March 26th.
Make a motion to continue to March 26th.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Great. take a vote on that. Dot?
Yes.
And Jim?
Yes.
And Megan?
Yes.
And Kalina's a yes. And Marilyn?
Yes.
And Brian?
Yes.
And Buzz still isn't here? Okay.
No buzz.
All right, we're going to continue, and we will see you then.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, 6:50, we got hearings.
Do we have time to do the Spruce Street?
You know what? No, let's do Spruce Street after.
All right, so
Spruce Street I don't think is here, so might as well,
we're going to move to
Over
public
here.
hearings.
yeah.
All right, it is 6:53, I think. And we're going to open a public hearing, and this is for 2 Braintree Avenue. It's a notice of intent. It's proposing construction of additions to a single-family house at 2 Braintree Avenue within the buffer zones to several coastal resource areas and land subject to coastal storm flowage. Do you have any comments, Matt?
I think this is the first hearing. I think Nick from Grady is online to present the project.
I am here. Good evening.
And would you just say your name again for the record?
Yes, Nicholas Ling from Grady Consulting here to.
You're coming through very soft. I don't know if you
Very,
can put the mic
quiet.
closer to your mouth.
Is that any better?
It is.
Yes.
Perfect. Sorry about that. Nicholas Ling from Grady Consulting.
All right, what have you got to present to us, Mr. Liang?
May I share my screen?
Please do.
So we had a site walk just yesterday. What I have here for you is actually a revised plan from what you have in front of you. We've made a couple of revisions based on the site walk yesterday and some of the comments we had received previously from Matt, one of which was the revision date revision date box has been added to the plan. As it was just mentioned, there are a number of resource areas on and adjacent to the property here, and we've added additional setback lines to represent all of the setbacks for all the separate resource areas. And we have also added, there was an enforcement order from the previous ownership. There were 4 cedar trees, zooming in on them slowly for you here in the backyard, that we added to the plan to represent their location. And we also need to formally request a variance for construction within the plan subject to coastal flooding. So, just a little overview of the resource areas we have here. The cyan line down the center would be the flood zone line, and then the offsets leftwards of that actually extend off the property. The 100-foot buffer zone, excuse me, encompasses the entire property. And then if you look to the east side, the right side of the plan, there is a stone revetment. The top of that, or the landward side of that, is the top of the coastal bank, and the southerly side, the easterly side of that would be where the salt marsh takes over and it leads into Kingston Bay. The proposed additions have been labeled in color here. So we have in the rear, we have an existing overhang that they're looking to just enclose and make an enclosed living space rather than just a roof one. The deck does not have the spacings as were just discussed in the previous hearing, so the deck is an impervious surface in this situation. And then the other addition is going to come off the front of the structure, on the front right-hand side, going to allow entry from the front of the building because there actually is not a front door currently. And to offset the additional impervious area created by that front addition, we are proposing to remove a portion of the driveway and the brick walkway in the front area to make sure that those offset appropriately. We do have also 9 smart vents proposed around the foundation of the existing structure. These vents are designed to allow the free passage of water in and out. So basically, it will help stabilize the structure in any kind of a flooding situation, prevent it from possibly coming apart and blowing away. So we believe that is a significant improvement on the current existing conditions, as well as the offset of the impervious surface area. And we'd be happy to answer any questions that the Commission has.
Matt, you want to make your comment?
Sure. Yeah, I noted in the staff report, just a little bit about the resource areas and that it was clear all of the work is proposed either within land subject to coastal storm flowage or its no-touch setbacks. All of those now are shown, and I believe Nick said that they did update to provide a formal variance for that. And they'll be sending that in with the updated plan, likely tomorrow. And put the eastern red cedars on the EO, so that's taken care of. I figured the commission would want that there because those are supposed to be maintained in perpetuity based on the enforcement order. There was a comment from DEP that said, as noted on the plan, project is located within land subject to coastal storm flowage, zone VE, and limit of moderate wave action. Concom may wish to consult with the building inspector regarding the requirement to elevate the structure on a pile-supported foundation and check accuracy of coastal bank pursuant to DEP Coastal Bank Policy 92-1. I did send this filing to the building department. I didn't hear anything back on it. I believe from the filing that they are proposing helicals on this. Is that correct, Nick?
That is, yeah.
Okay. And as far as the accuracy of the coastal bank, I personally didn't perceive that to be really concerning on this particular project, unless a commissioner thinks so, just based on the position of the revetment wall, that the top of the revetment wall reaches a flat surface, and that would typically be the top of coastal bank. I did note, like I've noted on some other filings recently, this property is just landward of mass shellfish growing area, CCB 43.3, which is currently active and used by the public, with commercial oyster beds at the outer reaches or just beyond, and that every effort should be made to limit runoff in this area, and that eelgrass beds in the area have been declining because of runoff from lawn areas. So when we did the site visit, Rick Grady was talking, I had asked for a little bit of information about the smart vents because I had no idea what they were for. And I guess the idea behind them is they're supposed to let water in. Rick had said he perceived them to be a benefit. I had talked a little bit about variances and that, you know, while this doesn't seem to be a really egregious project, usually when we see a variance request, usually it's accompanied by, you know, mitigation of some sort. So talked about usually that consists of some plantings at the top of coastal bank protected by conservation posts, help stabilize the bank over time, that sort of thing. Rick had thought that these vents alone were an improvement for the purpose that, and Nick can correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe he can elaborate on this a little bit, but that they would prevent, you know, essentially the structure from entering the resource area in pieces. You know, I think the idea behind it is rather than have the structure resist the pressure of floodwaters, it lets it in, then lets it back out, or lets it infiltrate into the ground. My only question, other than just wondering how the commission feels about that, I'm wondering if Nick has more information about that, is this is a crawl space area. I took a very brief look in there, and it looked like it was just kind of plastic-covered dirt. I don't know if there's anything concerning down there in terms of if you do get flooding in there and kind of let it go washing in and out, is there any concern about anything being brought back out there? There may be nothing under there at all. It would just be dirt, so it might not be an issue. That's the only thing I really think of on that. Other than that, you do have formal variance requests. We don't have all of them yet in front of us, but to me, you know, really, in terms of the development going closer to the resource areas, it's on an area that's already covered by impervious decking. I did walk back there and look at it. There is minimal, if any, spacing between the boards, and the area that they're talking about walling in already is covered by a roof anyways. So that part, not particularly concerning. The portion on the front, you know, it's getting further away from the resource area. counteracting that by removing impervious surface so that your numbers don't go up. Really don't have too much to say about the project. It's not something that seems really out of reach, more just procedural. As far as, you know, if the commission's issuing a permit, they're gonna have to specify the variance requests. Special conditions, if the commission is issuing permits, I thought any dumpster used as part of this project must be covered. We should talk about any specifics we want to see in a special condition for that, so that we don't end up with things blowing into the bay. And then the usual blurb about outdoor chemicals and fertilizers, as I talked about earlier with the eelgrass and the shellfish growing area and all that.
Usually Buzz is here to bring up roof drains and things like that.
Yeah, in fact, I said I said you should have more information about these vents, because there's probably one, maybe two commissioners who are gonna know about these, and everybody else is not gonna know,
Right.
so, yeah. Jim might know.
I can give you a little bit more detail on these vents. These are something that are, they're an engineered structure that we use all the time, especially new construction. And they're actually recommended for a lot of new construction, because it helps you get through with the FEMA flood insurance issues that you can run into with new construction. So if there's any kind of even a latticed enclosure, these can be used to basically prevent anything from being ripped off of the structure, more or less, is how it's simply described. As the water rises and comes inwards, it's smashing hard against the foundation walls, and it's pushing, and it's basically trying to crumple it from the outside in. And what the smart vents do is they allow the water to come in so that the pressures attacking the foundation walls are the same on both sides. So basically, it's an engineered attempt to remove that kind of pressure on the structure so that the structure can remain intact in a more durable way in the same quality of storms compared to those that don't have those on the structures.
Did any of the other commissioners, do you have any questions, Jim, about this? Any comments?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. I understand how the vents work. I understand, wave action. I understand how toppling the walls can, lead to, a sidewall, and an above roof structure collapsing, right? So essentially, you got to look at these as a limitation of the damage, or a potential limitation of the damage of, the existing structure in that type of situation. Now, that's also something that is good for their insurance problem, right? So it's not the only reason why it was done for us, right? So when we look at this parcel, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, this is that parcel that we had water problems, right? There's a house that was developed across the street. There's water that runs down, it runs across the street. There's, been a lot of enforcement discussions. There were some trees that came down. We were understanding that there was gonna be NOI, and that, I think we had some discussion at some point that we were gonna, get a little bit deeper into some of these discussions when we got there. So I think this is our one opportunity to kind of, close out that whole discussion when, previously it was just a couple of trees got, pulled down. But let's remember that there is a water problem here in this area, okay? So when I look at this here, obviously we know what this is. We know that the neighborhood is probably something that we couldn't build today, and then we have to accept that, some of this stuff is there and it exists, and we're not gonna, be able to do anything that's gonna be, 100% right. So let's just try to get as right as we can, all right? So when I look at this, the problem is the runoff, right? We're concerned with runoff into the bay. How do we adjust that? Well, we don't have to let anything change on this house. So they're coming to us, they're asking for variances. We have the right to, to offset one infraction or into something that they're not technically allowed to do with something, to offset that effect, right? So my thought is that this is when we would want to talk about, dry wells, right? How do we improve the infiltration? We can decrease the runoff of this site by, getting some dry wells built in. It's not something that's hard to do, especially, if they're going to be, building things in here. It's the right time to ask for it. Also, if their project is already, discussing that they're gonna be taking decking down, and I don't quite follow exactly what's gonna be here. Looks like it's construction, and it looks like it's existing, but I don't know if, and maybe Nick can let us know. Are you planning on removing these, the covering for the deck boards? Or is this just a simple modification and you guys are gonna be cutting some out and leaving the rest of them in place? Could you answer that?
I believe they're gonna be cutting out the section that they're gonna be replacing with, the walled-in area, because they need to inspect the piles to make sure that they're in good condition before they, can decide whether or not how many they need to supplement with the helical piles.
When I hear that, Nick, I expect that there's gonna be, work access area that's gonna need to be established, so I would expect that some of these boards are coming off adjacent, and at that point, tough to, reuse these boards when they come off, and I'm thinking that, I'm hearing that probably gonna see, some kind of new decking go back in place, and if that's the case, I certainly think that we could, we have every right to ask for them to meet the standards that we've discussed, just even in this meeting, about, the spacing in between these boards, so that we can, limit the impervious on this parcel specifically because of the past history and the problems that it's had. The dry wells, impervious surface, the decks, and then I'd like to see offsetting, some offsetting plantings up top, closer to the resource area to help prevent runoff in that area, so that we can, circle the three things and kind of, feel that we did as much as we could on this one when it came back, without breaking the bank for the app. Those are my comments.
Do any other commissioners want to comment? Did you have anything else to say, Nick?
The deck, we are only removing the decking boards where the overhang exists. We are not removing the decking over the boards over the entire deck. So to space out the decking would be quite an undertaking when they're not intending to be removing that section of boards.
Okay.
So all the more reason to try to attack the runoff type of conditions through another path. So.
Is there anyone in the virtual public or in the public present who has a comment on this? Well, if you want
can
to,
jump up if you wanna.
could you just hop up to the podium and announce your name for the record?
Name's Veronica McCarthy.
Yep.
And it's my residence that I'm trying to do, and it really is just enclose the existing overhang in that porch, just to enlarge the kitchen big enough so I can get a table in there, basically. And in the front part of the house, where I want to put that addition, the main water line and the hot water heater, the only access to it is outside. So you have to walk around the front of the house if a pipe breaks or whatever in the dead of winter. And I'm 70 years old. I don't want to be, shoveling out to the front. So I want to enclose that so I can internally have access to the main water line and the hot water heater.
Okay.
So, that's what my little projects were about, but they seem to be a little more difficult than I thought. So, yeah.
All
Does
right.
anyone have any other questions for me?
Thank you very much.
So we still don't have technically, a formal variance request in front of us. So I think no matter what, you're looking at continuance. If commissioners feel that they need some form of mitigation for a variance request beyond the structural stability, smart vent installation, they would have time to come back with something. Again, I don't think this this isn't egregious, this is, and I mentioned during the site walk that, you know, the previous issues that were here from people cutting trees down and everything like that, I said you may want to plant some things over time to start to soak up some of that water that large tree out front is no longer doing. You know, there may be a way to kind of do two birds with one stone thing here. But that's up to the applicant and, you know, the representative. You know, I don't think we need to mandate anything specific here. I think it's pretty light mitigation. But like I mentioned, this is the typical Rocky Nook backyard. It's turf right up to the coastal bank with, you know, maybe some landscape plantings, non-native hedge kind of thing, nothing that really stabilizes that area, and nothing that really prevents runoff carrying, you know, any contaminants or anything into the bay. So I think it's easy enough to do some mitigation on something like this.
To introduce some plantings.
Something. Yeah, I mean, Jim mentioned dry wells. I don't know, you know, given this area and how different a lot of the substrate is throughout the Nook. I mean, you may just have a lot of ledge under there. You may not be able to do
Right.
dry wells. If you figure dry wells are the cheapest and easiest for you to mitigate, then you offer dry wells. If you don't, then you offer a strip at the top of the coastal bank with some native plantings covered, protected by conservation posts. And that, you know, it's nothing that grows up to block the view. It's just basically grasses and forbs, shrubs.
Well,
that
some stability too.
stabilize.
Asi-
Yeah.
Aside from the drainage, but some stability for that area because you're impacting it more by what you're adding.
Yeah. Yeah, I think anything you can do on the top of coastal bank is not just beneficial for the resource areas and for everything else that needs, you know, flowers and leaves and everything else. It helps provide stability to the site, so.
So if this is going to, hypothetically, how much time?
I guess I would ask Nick, you know, with, you know, our typical information receipt policy is 3 weeks, but for continuance, for additional information, it's 1 week. So if we continued this to March 12th, by March 5th, I would need to have the variance request and any revisions that you're making to show some form of mitigation. Is that feasible, or would you need
Yeah.
more time?
Yeah, no, we can put together a planting plan by then for you. We can do that.
So you're talking about March 12th? Do I hear a motion to continue this matter to March 12th?
I move to continue this to March 12th.
Is there a second?
Second.
That's it.
Thank you, all sorts of seconds. All right, I'm going to take a vote on that, on the motion to continue this to March 12th. And Dot,
Yes.
and Jim,
Yes.
and Megan?
Yes.
I'm Kalina, and yes. Marilyn,
Yes.
and Brian.
Yes.
Well, thank you all very much. We'll see you back, same place, different day.
Thank you.
Oh,
You can zoom in if you want. The link will be online, or you can email me for the link or whatever. But- Oof. Okay.
well, good luck.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon, too. Yeah. Sisters, by the way, was it Shore Drive? Shore Drive, yeah.
Coincidence we bought in the same neighborhood. Thank you.
Good night.
Have a good night.
All right. You want to go back to
Going
Spruce
back to
Street?
23 Spruce Street.
So I'll now open a public meeting to discuss a request for a certificate of compliance for 23 Spruce Street. Do you have any comments, Matt?
I don't. The last time we continued this, I said that the builder was on vacation for 2 weeks, understood that they needed to update the as-built plan to show the correct location of the conservation posts. And they were waiting on their engineer or land surveyor to provide the updated plan, and I have not heard from anybody, I think because the builder was still on vacation until very recently. So if the commission wants to continue it, we continue it. If you want to continue it further out, you can continue it further out. If you want to deny it for lack of information, you can deny it. I don't mind, you do whatever you want.
Well, is there anyone either virtually present who might represent the applicant? No, they're still on vacation, all right. Are there any comments from members of the commission?
Yeah, I would,
Jim?
clean it.
Yes.
Jim, I would say let's kick us out 2 months, give them some time to come back and get everything ready.
And how long did you suggest?
I would say 2 months.
Really? Would that be
That would be April
April
23rd.
23? You want to make that motion, Jim, to,
Make that motion, I make a motion to continue this until the April 23rd meeting.
all right, do I have a second?
Second.
Great, I'm going to take a vote on that. I have a motion to continue this matter to April 23.
Hold, can we hold that for 1 second?
Yes,
Let me
certainly.
check my phone. I wanted to see if that
I think
aligns
that-
with April vacation.
Yeah,
Cause, yeah,
yeah, it
Will you
does.
be in Belize or something?
I will be away,
I'll be away.
so I believe
April
Juliana at that point will be back in the office, but I don't know that for sure.
Yeah,
So, we could either do April 9th or May 14th.
Can we shoot for the 9th?
I would amend my motion for May 14th.
to May 14th?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you want to comment on that?
Well, I was going to suggest the 9th and hopefully put this to bed.
I think they could probably have it by the 9th. I mean,
It's a long
I
time
kind of brought it
coming.
up the way I did
Yeah.
because I don't want to just keep continuing things 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks
Right.
when we're waiting for information that we're not getting. But, you know, with the builder having been on vacation for 2 weeks, I understand. I just,
I know, but conservation posts?
I don't want to kick it off for 2 weeks, but maybe 2.5 months is
All right,
tough.
let me jump in here, right? So we asked them to be ready, they weren't ready. 2 weeks is not something that works. We give them 2 months, that gives them plenty of time to respond, because from what I'm hearing, they did not respond. So give them a month to respond, give them a month to get ready. If we have to go further than that, so be it, because we don't have a meeting. But we shouldn't be talking about these things every 2 weeks just for the convenience of the contractor. If it was important, they would be here, and they would be ready to close this out. So, give them more time than they need, and hopefully the next time they come in, they'll see that there's a reason why you have to close your stuff out, because we're not at your leisure. We're here to do things in an expeditious way, and you have to do your part.
So, Jim, would you be opposed to April 9th? That's 6 weeks, right?
I like pushing for 2, and you said that that's not there, so.
Yeah, I just didn't want to continue them to a meeting that we might be looking to cancel anyways.
Because we should only have to discuss this one more time, and it should be just present the information, and we should be able to vote on it, just to close it out. This should not be something that we talk about 5 times, because they just didn't respond to us in that time, so.
Let's,
Let's push to the 14th of May.
we can
That's
keep,
my motion.
we can keep April 23rd, and if we end up canceling the meeting, they just get pushed a little bit further. But Juliana might be able to be around to provide support for that meeting, so.
It's not worth arguing about the date.
All right, let's just do the 23rd, like the motion was suggested.
So do I have a second on that motion made by Commissioner Franklin to continue this matter until April 23rd?
Second.
A second from Megan. I'm going to vote on that. Dot? This, I'll clarify it. This is a motion to continue this until April 23rd. Made and seconded. No, we're voting. Dot?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Lena's a yes. Marilyn?
Yes.
And Brian?
Yes.
Okay, so that carries. Thanks a lot. We're moving on to enforcement on 44 Rabbith Road,
Yes.
or Rabbith Road?
I'd like to say Rabbith. I don't
like to say
know.
Rabbith, too. It sounds like
I don't know how it's actually pronounced. I don't see anybody on. I can give you what I understand to be the reality.
That would be good.
There was some communication breakdown between the property owners and the building department. The building department asked for specific information. The property owners provided some information, but not all of the information. Then we got the new building commissioner, and so then he asked for information, but didn't have the original information. But at this point, still, they don't have the information that they need to determine whether they could issue a building permit for that
So this is in
wall.
regards to the wall?
This is specifically in regards to the wall, because that was how we sort of left everything, was that there were multiple issues on the property, but the most egregious was the construction of the wall with the like concrete parking area on top without a permit from any department. So the commission had said, basically go file a building permit and see if it can pass them. If it can pass them, then you can try to file in retro with us. The building commissioner this past week, might have been late last week, early this week, provided specifics on exactly what they need to provide. Basically, the company that made the blocks that the wall was built out of sent some specs, which they forwarded to the building department. But the specs outline the process whereby you're supposed to take their specs and the info about the site location and send information to the block company, apparently, and the block company will then stamp and sign plans, or, essentially sign something stating that it can be built in that way in that
It's
location.
viable, sure.
And without that information, the building department's not able or willing to make a determination on whether that can be built. So that essentially is where that is at. And I did sort of let them know that somebody should probably be here tonight to talk to the commission, because there was nobody here the last time we discussed it, and you all wanted me to reach out and say, hey, come to the next meeting.
Thank you for doing that.
So that's where we're at.
Here they aren't. Is there anyone on virtual? No.
Just Jim and Dot.
Okay.
And the docks are still in the water.
That was they let us know that, the husband went down south for storm response, late fall, early winter, and so they let us know that they weren't gonna be able to take that out until the spring.
Yeah, well, we were told in August that they were gonna take them out
Yeah.
by the homeowner.
We were told it was fairly simple.
Will remove dock
Remove them all.
immediately.
I mean, there are more issues to the property,
Oh, yeah.
even the bigger dock, but, I mean, that was something that could either be dealt with during this process, or it can be dealt with when we get to updating the dock, or creating sort of the dock, retroactive dock standards. I don't have a preference one way or the other. I think with this property, we're sort of stepping through from most important down, and haven't really gotten anywhere. It's been a long time, but, yeah.
If I could, Kalina?
Yes, please, Jim.
So we had, as Matt said, we kind of looked at this and we said, all right, let's not talk about theoreticals, because if the building department says is this retaining wall that wasn't permitted needs to be going down because X, Y, or Z, then we're gonna have to discuss an NOI to remove it, okay? That's a pretty simple process for them to complete with most of the block manufacturers that design the right products for these uses. So, you know, it is something that if you're not somebody who does this all the time, it's a little bit more of a process than you might think. But at the end of that process, you know, they should be able to get the answers that the building department's gonna rely on in their assessment of whether or not it's stable enough to stay in place, right? So I think that, you know, the docks, I think it was very clear that they were gonna remove them. You know, I wish that they had, just because it would make it easier just to, you know, say, all right, well, let's just give them a little bit more time. But, you know, along the line of needing a little bit more time, it just seems like they need some more time to get this, you know, this paperwork trail that's gonna dictate what the next steps are for Conservation Commission. So I think that based on that, you know, I think the best action is to give them some more time, you know, to get what they need to and close out the discussion with the building department.
And you also have the Board of Health Department involved too, don't you?
Did you?
So, I mean, there's a lot going on.
Right.
On that property. The Board of Health had to go out to inspect 46 Rabbith Road for the alternative technology septic system. And the health agent commented that there was a privy on 44 Rabbith Road, which I think we had all seen, you know, kind of a little shed-looking thing while we were out there. Well, she said she saw plumbing coming out of the bottom of it and had concerns that maybe it was still in use. I sort of doubted, but reached out to the homeowners and just said, hey, the health agent passed on this information, can you speak to that? And they said that it is not in use, and that, I believe she said the health agent told them that they can keep the structure there if they want, but why filling in the what do you call it? The
Privy part?
something,
pit?
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where that is. Yeah.
So, you just want to talk about this again later?
It's up to the commission. I mean, I typically, I don't like just kind of indefinitely floating things. I mean, they are working towards getting this stuff wrapped up, but also I think have a lot of other stuff going on. So if the commission really wants to see movement on this, I mean, you don't have to issue an enforcement order now. You can, I don't want to say threaten, but inform that if you don't see significant movement by a certain date, that you will issue an enforcement order mandating that,
Right,
with
and
daily
the-
fines if compliance isn't achieved.
But also be definitive as to the different moving parts, and they
Right.
might not all have the same end date,
Right.
depending upon the complexity of that particular issue. But I think it all needs to be clearly laid out for them.
Yeah. Yeah, personally, I've been focusing on the wall because to me, the wall is, call it the most egregious violation, the one with the most capacity to damage the resource area if it is not built, you know, properly. We already know it doesn't meet the standards of KWPR as it's built due to its proximity to the pond and the height. So that is the thing most likely in need of an NOI filing in retro, or complete, just rip it out
It's gotta
and
go.
file for whatever you want to do instead. I think a lot of the other things can be accessory to that. So to me, that is, I think, the biggest thing that should be dealt with, that you want to see dealt with. Like I said, they are dealing with it, but I think there was a long period of time of, you know, the building department saying, well, we need this, and then not getting a response, whereas the homeowner thought that they had provided all the information that the building department needed. And maybe having a time period without a building inspector in between maybe didn't help. But, yeah. I'll do whatever you all tell me to do. I think my suggestion right now is that an enforcement order would not be necessary. I think maybe just a hint that the commission's not going to keep continuing this down the road without seeing real answers on this.
So you could send them a letter of notice that an enforcement order would be forthcoming by a date certain if A, B, or C are not completed by another date certain?
Sort of what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
Yeah, just block
that
it
makes
out.
sense.
And also, is there any need for input, any further input from the building department with you, or is it just a matter of getting it?
I mean,
Timeline?
we've been communicating on it, so I understand what they need. They also have concerns, obviously, about issuing a building permit when there are wetlands concerns, but we should be able to figure that out, because all the commission really wants to know is it something that could be permitted by the building department?
Right.
We know that it doesn't meet the standards of KWPR. What we don't know is it something that mitigation could, if
Yeah.
it's built, and I think we already talked about this, but if it is built soundly as far as engineering is concerned, and it is not a danger to blow out into the resource area, then is it something that could be mitigated during an NOI filing instead of needing to be modified, needing to be removed, needing it to be tiered, that sort of thing, so.
And what kind of timing are you thinking about? Because I would think you'd want to put them on notice that
So-
it's imminent and not at some, to make it more urgent for them to start doing something.
So my thought process, and I'll ask Jim for his opinion, is that now that they know specifically what they're supposed to be doing as far as with that block company, that to me, a month should be sufficient for, we put this on the March 26th meeting, and if we don't have information at that point from the building department, that at least they've received what they needed to receive, and they haven't had the time to respond to the request, that's one thing. But if the building department at that point says, we still don't have all
If
the
it's still
information,
outstanding, right.
then I think I would say maybe March 27th, I issue an enforcement order, and the enforcement order would give them a hard deadline and say, if you do not have X and Y done by this hard deadline, you're gonna be fined $300 a day until you do.
Okay.
And I would expect, and this is where I'll ask Jim, because he said he's sort of dealt with this sort of stuff with companies before, is a month a reasonable timeline to get one of these companies to turn that information around?
It's very reasonable. I mean, ultimately, if somebody got involved with this, a week's turnaround time would be enough to do it. This is not a complex, process, so. You're giving them a month, you're giving them plenty of time, and like Matt said, if it's on us as a town because, we got some turnover, and we're the slow walker, then we deal with that separately than, somebody not engaging in the conversation of correcting and closing this out, so. I think a month's a good time.
Sounds like an approach.
That works for me. If it works for you.
All right, we're going to move on to meeting minutes, of which we have none, so we'll move on to updates.
Yeah, ongoing projects. I will pull up some quick pictures just to show you what we're doing at Blackwater. I will share my screen somehow. All right. This is the entrance to the bog complex. So you've just walked out of the parking lot. This is the first water control structure where Sampson's Brook would be breaking out behind you, crossing Winthrop Street and going into Blackwater Pond. What you're looking at is the central ditch that has been widened and roughly, you can see my cursor, right, Jim?
Yes.
Right about here, there's a log jam in there to try to move flow a little bit. Basically, this water control structure is going to get pulled out, and everything that you see from here through to where Sampson's Brook is going to be like a rounded cobble kind of stream bottom with a notched log weir to control the water level going over. Here you see one of the ditches that was filled. All of the perimeter ditches in this old bog complex are being filled, forcing the water back towards the middle, reducing standing water for mosquito breeding. This is on the west side looking south. Again, that whole ditch has been filled in. First thing it was filled in with were wood chips, and you can see some remnant wood chips up here. The rest of it is the material from the trail on the bank being pushed in. They're also filling in the interior lateral ditches as needed so that you don't leave pockets of standing water, again, for minimizing mosquito breeding habitat. This is standing on pretty much right where the old pump house was, looking across the dike road. So the natural wetlands are off to your right, the bog cell is off to your left. Now you can see to the left there, I'm standing on the dike right near the old water control structure. You can see on the left a new channel that was created to meander the stream off into the center of the bog complex instead of having it go down the eastern perimeter ditch. This is looking exactly at where the water control structure and the pump house were on the eastern side of the dike. That bridge there is temporary. That's just bog boards for the machinery to make it across. You can see right here, this is the notched log where this is going to be controlling the flow in place of the water control structure that used to be over here. Water level is very low right now, so the water level is going to be higher than that. It's going to spill over this, go through the spillway across to where the channel was created. And that's looking from where the water control structure was up at the natural wetlands. Good look from here. This is the one that I posted on our social media pages earlier. Standing right where the eastern side perimeter ditch was that's filled right here. This is where the majority of the flow used to go through. It would skirt the whole bog complex and go around to the south. The dike is over here. And so now you have this, kind of meandering, nice looking stream there that's going towards the middle. Once you get to the middle, more log jam features. Basically the idea with this was to get the flow back to the central channel that goes north-south, but to break up the flow so that it doesn't just channelize and run straight. So we have these log features that are installed that will help the water meander around, and they're also going to put a couple more logs or root balls on top of these just so that they don't look like an engineered structure. It'll just look like a natural pile of logs or beaver dam, that sort of thing. This is right sort of in the middle of the bog complex. This is the bigger, there's about 11 logs in there creating that meander, and they are going to pile a few more natural looking ones on top. This lovely looking area is called microtopography. This is really the good stuff. It looks terrible now, but this really helps take, an established agricultural cranberry bog mat and turn it back into a natural wetland by breaking up the flat topography, breaking up the cranberry vines. In most of the areas where we did the microtopography, these were the areas that were really dense with white pine with nothing growing underneath them, so you really didn't even have a lot of cranberry vines in these areas, but you did have a lot of upland soils. You can see some of the sandy looking stuff here. That would be the sand that was piled on top over the years, and then you see the big black chunk there. That's the good wetland soil. So when they did all this work, everything was frozen solid, so as things thaw out, they will settle down. As things rain, things will settle down. It will get more homogeneous, but won't be flat the way it was before. And then there's no plan to do any seeding or anything in here because the natural seed bank will pop out over the next couple of years, and you'll have some nice wetland plants out there. There's a little example of using the slash on site just to make a pile for habitat quality. We had way too much of that here from the amount of pines that were growing on there, so we did chip some of them and get rid of them, but as necessary and as needed, just kind of take some of these and pile them up and leave them for habitat value. So yeah, can't show this to you and say, hey, look, it looks great, but I promise it will look great in a couple of years. And again, we highlighted 3, 4, if you include one really small area, but several areas that were in need of microtopography, but where we had the, thick sphagnum mat with really good native wetland shrubs and forbs, we left those areas alone, not heavy-handed by design, just as needed. So this is on the eastern side, looking across the bog. Here you see the bog boards that they laid down so they can have the machinery out there without compacting the soil too much. Another look at the filled perimeter ditches here. It's the machinery filling the ditch on the east side. Again, most of this area was just regenerating white pine, really dense, nothing growing beneath it. And this is the eastern side looking north, so they're just about finished up with filling the ditches in. So the next step will be down this area here. Like I said, this is where we started. This, by next Wednesday's meeting, this should be a pretty good visual. They should have the water control structure pulled out. And then we'll just need some rain to fill everything in, and then we need to build bridges across where the 2 water control structures were, and then the property will be back open again.
There you go.
So the in-water work needs to be done by March 15th. They are on track to have that all done, and then they'll be coming back likely in April to finish sort of fixing where the trail was. And what that looks like depends on what the conditions are. If we need to put a solid sub-base in there to support it, we will, but if we don't, we won't. So we're going to assess that when the rest of this work is done. And then, like I said, a couple bridges for foot traffic, and then everything will be back open likely in late spring, early summer. In the meantime, the trails on the north side in the natural wetland area that go around the woods are still open. You just can't access them from the parking area. So if you access from the, what's it called, the 55 plus country, town, if you live in town and country and you access the trails that way, you can still do that. If you access from the Big Y or Stop and Shop, power lines, you can still access that way. Or if anybody accesses from the Boy and Girl Scouts property, I don't know. The trails up north are still open. It's very clear where the blockage is before you get to this area. The company that's doing the work, Sumco, put, very firm blockage in the way so you can't accidentally walk in the wrong area. So the area around the bogs will be closed until late spring, early summer, but the northern portions of the property are still open. If anybody has any questions, I can answer them. Otherwise, that's what's going on.
Anything else? Are we ready for closing remarks?
I think that's it.
I think we are. The next meeting will be held on February 26, 2025, starting at 6:30 p.m. The time is now, I'm sorry,
No,
That's,
March 12th.
March 12th.
you wrote today's date for next meeting.
I did.
But and so we're going to correct that to March 12th. Thank you, Megan.
Megan's doing the dialogue.
Hers
The,
doesn't.
the,
Oh, that one, okay.
Yeah.
the oriented member sitting next to me, thank you so much. So the next meeting will be held March 12th, 2025, starting at 6:30 p.m. The time's now 7:45. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Take a vote on that. Dot?
What's your favorite motion?
You would, okay, Dot's not
That's
speaking. Jim?
Yes, I'm here, yes.
Okey-doke, Dot. Jim?
Jim's yes.
Megan?
Yes.
Kalina's a yes. Marilyn?
Yes.
And Brian?
Yes.
Thank you all very much.